So Paige Albrecht and Paul Benz, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your desire to serve our community and your service to our community. We acknowledge it and we appreciate it. Yeah, pick any seat, anyone you want. So at the beginning, I'd like to do the same thing we did with the city council candidates. And why don't you take about 30 seconds to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the questions. Why don't you start, Paige? And I think you have to wait just a second for that to actually activate. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Paige Albrecht. Thank you for having us this evening, and for thank our sponsors, of course, and for all of you coming out on a rainy night. I'm glad that you did. You're welcome. As I said, I'm Paige Albrecht. I currently serve you on the City Council, and I have done so for a few years now. Before that, I served on Planning Commission and also on the Board of Adjustments. I live downtown. I live there specifically because I love Lehi and its heritage, and I've built a service record that I'm very proud of that has really made me engaged in the community. I love living here. I love the citizens here. I'm looking forward to serving further in the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Paige.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Benz. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. Sally, thank you for having us. What a great opportunity to come together and talk about our wonderful city. I live right off of Pioneer Crossing. I've lived there for a little over 10 years. I run a business right out of Thanksgiving Point, so Lehi's kind of my home territory. You'll see me crossing it, traversing Lehi all day, every day, with my work, with my family, with my children. And so we just love being here. We've been here 10 years. We're looking forward to many, many more. Thank you.
So let me make a quick suggestion. Would it be possible to have Ryan sit in the front row?
Yes, as long as you can see her.
I think would that work for you?
I think she'd probably like that better. The seats are better. As long as you can see her, that's fine. Thank you. Some of these questions that you're going to be asked are similar or the same as the city council questions because you wrestle with many of the same things. But one of the questions that we would like to ask, first of all, is as Lehi approaches a population of 100,000 residents, which is mind-blowing to me, the 4,000 residents, and considering all the regional and community meetings that need a city representatives like boards, the MAC, TSSD, potentially UDOT meetings, all the others, with the state officials, etc. Do you believe, we've discussed this before, it's been kind of an ongoing topic, but do you believe, and this is just a 30-second answer, do you believe the mayor position in Lehi should now be a full-time role or remain essentially quote-unquote part-time as it is? Why don't we start with you, Paige?
Thank you. This is an important question because for me it's not about titles, it's not about a paycheck. It's about what's required to serve the role effectively. If you ask our last two mayors, I think they would probably agree that it is not part-time in any way, shape, or form. In the last week alone, I've attended 3 regional meetings that have happened in the middle of the day. I've seen how important it is to be accessible to residents and available to have a seat at every single one of those important tables and be in the room. That's why I pledged to serve as a full-time mayor, although I'm not requesting any change in title, any change in salary. I will be leaving my position in the law firm, and I will work for Lehi residents full-time, because that's what Lehi deserves.
I appreciate that. Luckily, I've been a business owner here for 25 years. I have a very large staff that can run our office, and I also will be running full-time. I work here in Lehi. I have the capability to be in meetings and all the things that we need to be at to run the city successfully. Wonderfully, we have a wonderful city staff, and that staff will help in running our city. I don't believe that Lehi needs a full-time paid position at this point. Would that be in the future? Possibly, but at this point in time, it's still, quote, a part-time position. But I do believe that it is that it draws full-time hours, which I am more than willing and excited to put my hours into. Thanks.
Now, the next question is about the Parks and Rec. And let me just repeat the question. It's the same question as city council members. Residents consistently express a desire for more parks and rec opportunities, but funding, of course, is limited. The skating rink last winter was extremely popular, but it did not survive the budget cycle this year. What do you think about the city discontinuing it, and what are your top priorities for future parks and rec facilities in Lehi? And we'll start with you, Paul.
Are we going to go 1 minute?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. This is a great question because it draws a lot of interest from our residents who need to use these facilities. Parks and Rec is a huge part of what we need to have in our city, but it can't be necessarily one park. We have several parks in our city that need to be taken care of, and we can't over budget necessarily one. We also have some parks that can generate revenue. Willow Park has been worked with us with the county. I was able to go out there on July 24th and very saddened by the condition of this park. I don't know if you've been there as of late, but it's dead. And it's taken care of with freeway type barriers. It's not what a park should necessarily be. Our job is to make that park a viable place for people to go. I live on the southwest side. We don't have parks. When I moved here 10 years ago, Mayoral was the talk of town. Mayoral is still a dirt field. They continue to fill it with dirt because those funds continue to get transferred to another park. So there's some things we have to look at that thing.
I'd like to refocus on the question at hand, which was around the ice rink that could potentially be hockey, as Emily touched on earlier. I believe that was an important cut to the budget. We are not in a position to be funding fluff right now. We need to take real measures to develop parks that we can. That's why the City Council in the last few years has concentrated our funding on finishing parks. We have done them piecemeal in the past, where we do a little bit of this one and a little bit of that one, and none of them have ever become serviceable. So it's a different way of addressing our needs. We have parks on priority. What are we going to do next? Willow Park is on that list. In fact, in the last 2 years, we've planted more than 100 trees there. I'm fortunate enough to serve on the Parks, Trails, and Trees Committee, and we are actively working with County Commissioner Beltran on the opportunity to perhaps bring an ice hockey rink to Lehi at minimum cost, and I'll continue that work and cyber capitalism for that.
Let's get to traffic. We'll start with you. Did we start with you, Paige? Okay, thank you for keeping me on track. What are some ideas you have, on working with MAG-UDOT, ETA to improve Lehi's throughways and traffic, particularly the notorious east-west?
Notorious is a great way of putting it. I think we've all sat in that traffic. Fortunately, I've been able to attend the last few MAG meetings representing Mayor Johnson as Mayor Pro Tem. And this conversation happens a lot. No one is unaware of the problems. We've all sat in them, we all know what they are. What we need now are solutions for the traffic and for our infrastructure. So tonight I'm proposing a new initiative that I learned about recently in one of those MAG meetings, and we're calling it the Infrastructure Deferral Plan. We do have that budget excess that we could use, and I propose that we do it to pre-finance projects that MAG is intending to pay for in 2 years. We've seen it work in Saratoga, we've seen it work in Santa Fe, where we can basically float them alone with some of our extra funds so they can put in some of that infrastructure now instead of waiting until it's too late. I plan on implementing that as mine.
I find it ironic. This is the topic of the town. As I talk to hundreds and hundreds of residents, this is the topic. As we live 30 minutes to Salt Lake, 30 minutes to Provo, it takes us 30 minutes to get to the freeway. So it's a real problem. What I believe is, with this new health study that's coming, is we, the city, myself, and some council members and staff, have to really work directly with this health study. And we have to work very directly with our neighbors. We have to work with Lehi, we have to work with Saratoga Springs and others to make sure that we're united in getting these funds and money set up with the state, with UDOT, also the tracks and these other organizations that will help us move in the future. All these roads, our last road built was in 2010, that was Pioneer Crossing. It has been a problem ever since. And I wonder why all of a sudden now it's a priority. We are 50,000 more people than we were in 2015. And now all of a sudden the priorities hit. When I take office, it's priority one, day one.
alignment that has been proposed, do you support? And how would you foster cooperation between the two cities that right now cannot agree? And let's start with you, Paul.
So good question. I met with Chris Korn, who's going to be the mayor of Saratoga Springs, a few times already. We're beginning to collaborate some of those plans as we're trying to work together. I know in the previous history, Lehi has not always been a good partner to our neighbors to the west. And so we really have to work with them to gain some traction in moving forward with this. What I do know is through this Pell study, we're going to be given some options that will help us determine where that's going to go, whether it's on the north part of the lake, whether it's at the center part of the lake. But there are several communities involved in that decision that have to be massaged and have to be at the table with these people in order to make those decisions.
Again, I'll refocus the question on Pioneer Crossing versus the other routes, which is, in this case, 1900 South. I favor the route on 1900 South primarily because widening Pioneer Crossing beyond the flex lanes they're currently putting in would require the destruction of nearly 100 homes and businesses in Lehi. My job is to protect those. I've looked into the requirements of eminent domain. The state constitution of Utah goes a step further than the federal constitution in that it protects not only the value of your property if it is purchased, but also if it is damaged. And I consider that to be substantial damage to the residents. I think 1900 South is a better option. We've acquired some right away. We can get the support of MAG, and I think that can be built faster and be more effective and will not fail on day one.
Let's talk a little bit about a few other things that are, let's talk about the rainy day fund. We talked about that earlier, and Lehi currently does have a healthy reserve, but it actually, the amount in the rainy day fund exceeds the state mandated rainy day amount based on our budget. Some council members have suggested using part of it to meet some current budget needs. What is your philosophy on maintaining versus spending some of the reserve funds, not the part of the state mandates? And do you believe it's possible for the city to have too much say, not to mention the risk of millions of dollars in a bank where FDI insurance limits are below the amount in Lehi's rainy account, which is 35% of the general fund? Start with you, Paige.
Okay. Budget questions are really important because the role of mayor primarily is to oversee the budget. So in terms of this question, whether we should maintain in excess of that reserve, no, I don't think we should. I think it's important to max it out. I think COVID taught us all that that rainy day fund is crucial. We need it. We maintain 100 days worth of reserves for each of our utilities. It's incredibly valuable and it gives Lehi some resilience in the face of disasters like that. In terms of what we should do with the amount that's in excess of that, obviously there are a lot of possibilities. We don't want to do anything that would require long-term ongoing funding because it is a one-time mechanism. I would like to do the infrastructure funding that I mentioned earlier, where we could pre-borrow for projects that are guaranteed by MAG. I would also like to work on funding the city website that is in process of being rebuilt right now with some extra communication tools that would benefit residents. But in terms of keeping that reserve, I definitely want to. The city's has enough to get us through. The state has invested it wisely, and I would like to make sure that we are safe for a rainy day.
I agree. I believe rainy day funds are very important and very important into the future. I don't believe we should be overfunding rainy day funds, and I think there are plenty of needs currently within the city with our infrastructure, with our current public safety, some of those items where those funds can actually work into. I've had the opportunity to ride with 2 police officers. We're understaffed. We need help. And so there is some places where some of these funds can be placed that are key to our success. With the growth that we've experienced, it's time to build the infrastructure that should have been being built all along the way.
Talk a little bit more about money, since that is overseeing the budget, as Paige mentioned, is a primary role for the mayor. Currently, Lehi gives Utah County $100 per 1,000 residents for the homeless shelter that the Utah County leaders and the board have created. Do you feel the city has a role in supporting individuals or households beyond giving $100 per 1,000 residents, which works out to be $10 grand a year? Do you feel like the city has a role in supporting individuals or households who struggle with food insecurity and/or poverty? Start with you, Paul.
So I do have some experience in welfare needs, and I think welfare, we're only as strong as our weakest person in the city. We've heard that on teams and whatnot before. Do we have, however, a financial responsibility? The answer is maybe. The fact of the matter is what do we have currently? What's our projections, and where are we going with it? So I do support the 100 to the county. I understand how that works, but there are also local charities, there are families, there are neighborhoods, and lots of different things that assist in making sure people are faring well. A city, I don't believe the city necessarily has to be directly into it. However, I think the city can provide resources to these foundations that allow them to bless the lives of those that are needy. The needy are important to us. We cannot forget them. However, we have to do it in the correct way in order to help them get a step up in life and get moving forward.
I'd like to get some specifics about this because as the housing crisis expands, I think we all know that homelessness is going to go up. There's no question of it. People can't afford to live. Everyone deserves and to be respected. I want to make sure that that happens. However, on Lehi's part, the funding that you mentioned has gone directly to a committee that oversees the learning centers down in Portland. I have been attending those meetings as Mayor Pro Tem. I've been to the last 3. So I have been able to ask for some accountability for those funds. Let me tell you what they were used for. The red building needed a new water heating system, and they needed some piping to go towards that. They were able to use that funding and install that. They were able to consolidate the learning centers to 1 location instead of 3. We've been able to fund security that will do bag checks and keep our volunteers safe. And we've been able to partner with other cities, whose mayors also attend these meetings, to determine how that goes in the future. In just the last MAG meeting, County Commissioner Gordon has asked for elected officials to continue serving on that committee, and I have volunteered to do so.
Let's start with, Paige. I need your help. So we talked about code enforcement, Paige. It's a problem. And so give us your answer on what you think the city should do about our code enforcement problems.
Absolutely. I think it's a great question because, like many of you, I've run into some code enforcements at my own property that have been a little bit of an issue. So I've been through that system personally, and I know how it works and the ways it doesn't work. When I went back to school a couple of years ago, I went for a master's in public service, and one of the things that I did a capstone project on was the code enforcement in Lehi, the gaps, and how we can fill those gaps. One thing I discovered is that our tracking system is not great. Right now, once a month, the police department, the planning department, and our attorneys meet together to talk about what's currently in the pipeline in terms of code enforcement. What's a priority, where everything's going. It's a little sketchy, it's not great. I think we need a much better tracking system so that their efforts are more effective and so that things don't fall through the cracks, as I've experienced myself. So one of the things that came out of that capstone study is that there are tracking programs that are extremely effective that leverage AI to make sure that the efforts of our police don't go to waste. And I want to use some of our excess funding as a one-time purchase to help the police obtain some of these tracking systems so that they have that effective code enforcement that we need.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Absolutely.
So you don't believe that we should hire code enforcement officers, that the police should continue to do the code enforcement?
I would be in favor of having dedicated code enforcement officers on the force that perhaps don't have the super high level of training, but we have seen instances in Utah alone where civilian code enforcement has resulted in the death of a civilian code enforcement officer. The police that I've talked to are very uncomfortable sending civilians to a doorstep to try and enforce the things that are out there. And I agree with them. I think we need to have officers that for whom that's their dedicated job, so we don't have tracking difficulties where things fall through the cracks, but also that we don't employ civilians to do what really needs to be a higher level job.
Okay, Paul, you answer both those questions.
I'll kind of answer them together. I was able to meet with some city employees, in fact, the code police officer, and had a great conversation with him and Kim Schroeder, who's over the planning department. What a great opportunity. We are missing a boat right here. We this is a great opportunity for the city to hire a code enforcement department that would work under Kim and work in that area. I believe when we code enforce, our code actually gets corrected and fixed. It's hard to enforce a code when we get out and we notice that our code is so old that there's so many gaps or holes in it. When we start to enforce code, we learn what needs to happen. Those things can come back to City Council. They can fix the code and we can continue to be better at code enforcement. I don't believe we should be sending police officers to homes to tell them that their grass is too tall or their car's now. With that said, our code enforcement department will know when they need to take a police officer with them. I believe our police officers are currently better served maintaining the law in Lehi. After being on a couple of ride-alongs with our officers, both officers agreed with me that a code office department would well better serve both code and our police department in effectively doing our jobs as a city in maintaining both the code and the law in the city.
So so you believe that the code enforcement officers should not be part of the police department?
I don't. I believe there should be a secondary department that enforces code. And within that department, they can directly be tied with police if there's police needed. Because I'm with Paige, safety is a matter. But there is some code stuff that we can get fixed that doesn't require a man in a bulletproof vest with a gun on his head to correct.
Lehi does not have a arts facility that really is adequate to support our burgeoning arts community. For a city this big, we don't have a venue that will. We have the Lehi Arts Center that seats. Does it seat 100? I don't even know if it seats 100. We'll start with you first on this one page, and then we'll Paul. Do you believe that we should take some of our rainy day fund or set aside money for an arts a venue like that, a performing arts facility in Lehi?
That's a great question, and it's one that's really near and dear to my heart because I served as vice chair of the Lehi Arts Council for 12 years. So I've seen in person, and I can tell you that when they were using folding chairs, the capacity was 110. They've since installed some second-hand theater chairs, much like this, that took it down to 85. That's how many people can sit and watch a show in Lehi. Our Arts Council is not paid, they volunteer, and they do a great job on the budget they have. I don't want to take away from that. I also don't want to grow government, and if you look at places where Hale and Sarah have taken root, there's huge corporate contribution to that comes along with the city. I think that's important to leverage that so that a city becomes responsible for funding its own arts through corporations that have come. That's something I would want to actively pursue. I disagree, though, that we should reduce the amount of our park tax that the arts and culture gets. I think 30%, they do an amazing job on just that 30%. And if any of you have seen Mousetrap last week, you'll see what I mean. If you haven't, you should go.
So this is an important one to me too. I married an actress. In fact, the first play I ever saw her, she was kissing another guy in a Christmas story. So that'll give you some insight to my wonderful wife. The arts is for sure something we have to preserve. To what budget number, I don't know. We have other needs right now that trump that have to be taken care of. But do we steal money from the arts department? The answer to that is absolutely not. We have to fund it in a way that it continues to grow and possibly grow. Down the road, I think you can build budgets out to look into bettering the facility or looking into our business corporations and our business partnerships to build those operations and those opportunities out, just like the Ruth has and other locations. So yes, is it important? Yes. Do we need to keep our eye on it? Yes. Can it be something that over time is budgeted that we can grow? Yes. Does it take business partners to do it? Yes.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about campaign contributions. So campaign contribution transparency often focuses on PACs or organization donations. Still, individual donors may have interests tied to city decisions, such as wanting the city to build improvements for their property, receiving exceptions to zoning rules, or seeking incompatible rezoning. How do you view the types of contributions that you have received to your campaign when making decisions that could benefit your campaign contributors? How will you ensure fairness and transparency in making decisions?
Paul, awesome, thanks. This is a great question. I served on a political action committee in the insurance industry. In fact, I served as president of our PAC for many years. We did donations for legislators and whatnot at the Capitol. I believe if you accept money from people, you accept money from people. I also believe that I'm applying for the job to serve the people that you want them. If they choose to donate because they like what I'm saying, and like what we're doing, and like the road that I'm on, that is 100% their disposal to do so. I don't believe we should be acting in their favor to 1 cent of their money. And so I think you have to be very careful when you do that. PACs are interesting. PACs are, just as they represent a political action committee. The 2 first words should be enough for us to know where and how those monies are spent.
That's interesting because I actually didn't know that. So I didn't do my research about your history. But I will tell you a couple things about me. The first thing is, I am not independently wealthy. I worked as a social worker. I worked as a special education teacher. I don't own my own business. I don't have the financial resources that maybe some of the other candidates do. Which is why I am so proud of my donation sheet. It takes up more than a page. There's not enough room for all the $5, $10, $20 donations from regular Lehi citizens who want good government and expect me to provide that. I would encourage anyone to review that list because it is something that tells me that I have the support of people. My donation list is an indicator of who supports me, not necessarily who I support. And much like Emily said earlier, my vote cannot be bought. And my record proves that. Sometimes when people want to donate to my campaign, I look at the history of my votes and think, really? But they recognize that we have, at the end, the same goal, keeping Lehi an amazing place for residents, businesses, and leadership.
Okay, this is just a quickie one. Name something that you think the city is doing well, and also something where you think the city could do better. And we'll start with you, Paul.
Well, I would piggyback on the city council members. Our public safety is unbelievable. I've been on a day ride and a night ride, and Lehi's a different place when the lights go down at night. And these men and women are amazing. What they do for us and how they keep us safe is incredible. As I've sat in a cab on a truck of one of our police officers and watched 2 of them talk to a young man who was sitting on a freeway overpass at 9 o'clock at night when it was dark. These guys, these ladies and gentlemen are unreal at what they do. And they're above and beyond what they're asked to do at this point. We're only 2/3 of what we should be. We need more to support them. They're very, very overworked at this point in time. We need to sit down with Chief Paul and work out some budgets over the next 4 or 5 years to get him the people he needs to keep our town and our city safe and our kids safe. So I would tell you, our best is our public safety. One place that we surely can use some assistance is in our public safety.
I would not disagree with public safety, but I'm going to get a little creative here because that one's at the top. I agree with that. But one other thing that I think we're doing really, really well is in retention amongst city staff. People like to work for Lehi, and particularly in administrative positions. For a while there, we had a lot of turnover. There were people who couldn't depend on their leaders, were leaving for other cities. Now we have people coming from other cities to work for us. They're at the top of their game. They are the best in the business, and they want to be here because we take care of them. I want to make sure that we continue to do that. It's good for Lehi. It's good for for the residents, it's good for them, it's good for all of us. In terms of things that I would change, there's one in particular that I'd like to focus on. And it's a new initiative that I'd like to put in place in conjunction with our website rebuild, because we have engaged Lehi, but that concentrates in the planning department. We have Lehi City Chat, that's sort of random communication. We have all these different venues for getting information out. What we don't have is a consistent one that we concentrate on. Once a week I get a text and an email from Draper. Once a week I get a text and an email from American Fork. Just a little list of what's going on in the city. Road closures, events, things that are happening. We don't do that here in Lehi, and I think we should. In the last few public surveys we've done, the majority of citizens want more communication. They want to be emailed. They don't want to have to go on Facebook or social media to get their news. So I'm going to do something as part of that website rebuild to make sure that we have an avenue for citizens to get that information better and more clearly. And I look forward to sharing more about that.
So I'll ask a question that might be a little bit difficult, but I'll ask one of you, Paige, and one of you, Paul. I'll ask Paige's first. This is regarding land use. Some folks believe that Lehi has allowed far too much development, particularly housing. And since you have been on the city council, you have seen some of this development. So some would say that you are part of a government that has allowed too much development. What is your response to that, and how would you address all those folks who believe that Lehi has become, quote unquote, overdeveloped or allowed too much development or too much density?
Those are great questions. So let's talk about the reason behind them first, and then let's talk about what I'm going to do about it. The first thing is, we've already talked, the other candidates talked about the requirements of the state. Those are things we're pushing back on, and relationships and endorsements with King Christopherson, Roy and Loy. I think we're going to represent as well to make sure that the moderate housing initiatives are going to change. Just this morning, the Utah League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee talked about ways that they're going to push back on that to make sure that cities aren't required to do more than they can in terms of housing and infrastructure. That's really important. The other thing that we've done as a council is I recognized early on from my service on the Planning Commission that we were working with an outdated roadmap. It had projections that were inaccurate. Lehi had way overdue for a new general plan. And it was my top budget request 2 years in a row until I finally got it. In 2022, we put that in place. We also put in place measures where we can only hear general plan amendments twice a year, in February and August, so that we can look at them holistically. And we have drastically reduced the amount approved. I can send any of you a table of what we've done, and they include things like a change to neighborhood commercial with restrictions on only being a daycare center because the neighborhood needed one. They're not these huge density increases that people are thinking of. We've concentrated density around our TOD developments to make it close to transportation infrastructure. That's the first thing we've done. And the second thing is, as part of that general plan, we reduced Lehi's school build-out numbers from estimates as high as 300,000 to as low as 160,000. That still seems like a tremendous number to me. So we're going to need to be really careful to adhere to that general plan and make sure that our density does not go beyond what our infrastructure and our city can handle it, because we need to maintain what we have instead of supplementing.
Thank you. Paul, your question. To my knowledge, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you have not served on the Planning Commission or any volunteered on the Lehi City Committee, and yet we're looking at hiring you to be CEO of an organization that has public works, public safety, power department, plant maintenance, employees, planning department, and a very significant budget. Realizing that you have run your own company, but never have really served in a public, on the Planning Commission or in a volunteer capacity with the city, can you explain to us why we should hire you for this job?
Sure, love to. I think that's exactly why you're hiring me for the job. I think as you look to an answer that was just given, where we all of a sudden now can't build infrastructure and we've got to get infrastructure correct, we are way overbuilt for the infrastructure we have. So what qualifies me? I have served on many councils as president. I have served on councils as a member. I've served in my local church for many, many, many years. I've served as a president of PAC. I serve each day as a business owner. I write checks to employees. I grow a business. I'm accountable to them. They are accountable to me. We have been successful over 25 years. For 10 of those years, I managed the District for Farmers Insurance, and the operating money a year was $480 million. So this isn't new to me. This is an opportunity to get in and get it right. And I have the skills that have already done it. I've done it for 25 years. Managing budgets is not new to me. Managing employees is not new to me. Managing growth is not new to me. That's why I'm running, is because we need a new voice, someone with the skills that knows how to operate in those windows to run our city. So I appreciate the question, but that's exactly why I hired for your vote to be the next mayor.
How do you see Lehi complying? I think you mentioned it briefly, Paige, but for you first, how do you see Lehi complying with the legislative community on housing affordability? Let's go with you, Paige.
Of course. First off, I don't think that that mandate is accomplishing what they think that it is accomplishing or what they want it to. For those who are not familiar with it, Lehi is required to adopt certain goals each year that we must meet in order to qualify under the state's rules in terms of increasing the housing supply. I recognize that there's a need. I think they're coming at it with a sledgehammer instead of the fine tooth that they need in order to hone that. They recognize that too, and that's why the Legislative Policy Committee of the League is working so hard with the legislators to make it effective, because we don't just want checked boxes. We actually had this as a pretty big deal on our city council agenda last night because we heard the SHAR initiative. For those of you who don't know, it would be a way for developers to build homes at lower cost, basically by complying with certain requirements, including smaller lot sizes. We unanimously voted that down because it's not ready. It's half-baked. We don't think it's accomplishing what it needs to accomplish. We think it will increase the density without the necessary infrastructure. We don't think it's a solution. Although the legislature would say it's a checked box. Thank you.
So pulling some numbers, I pulled some numbers over the last couple of weeks of Lehi's growth since 2010. And I would be happy to go back to the state of Utah and say we've done our fair share. Cut us some slack for the next 10 or 15 years while we were allowed to build the infrastructure that never got built as we grew with affordable housing. We still have some places in Lehi that are affordable housing. The downtown area is wonderful. The neighborhoods just south of me are still affordable housing. There's housing out by my office that's still affordable housing. So we have it, but we have to take care of it. So we need to be mindful of those. I am with, and I understand that we need affordable housing. Get that. And it is very important. But I am more than willing to sit down with our state representatives, the governor of the state, and tell him we have done our fair share. Give us a few years to catch up on our infrastructure, and we'll be back on it.
So we're done with the questions that I've prepared. What I'd like to do now is just give you your moment for your last pitch to voters, and take about a minute and a half each. That'd be great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sally, for having us tonight. This has been a great opportunity to come out and answer some questions as we've been out in the neighborhoods, knocking doors and cottage meetings, and meeting with each of you and expressing how we feel of the direction of this great city. I'm an optimist. We live in an unbelievable place, really, truly an unbelievable place. We have unbelievable people. And I would side with Paige, and our staff in our city office is next to none. They do a tremendous job. But I believe a leader is needed to get in, to find our weak spots, to make them better, and take this city to the next level. There are a lot of things in our city that are not 21st century. They need to become 21st century in a rather quick turnaround. But we have the staff, we have to know how to do it. I am running for the job of mayor because I want a leader. I am a leader. I'm happy to lead. I'm excited to lead. And I ask you for your vote and all your neighbors' vote tonight. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Since it's closing statements, I would like to express a appreciation to all of you for coming. It really means a lot to have everybody out here to hear. And so nice to connect directly with residents. It's really one of my favorite parts of the job. In terms of why I am running and what I intend to do, I am a collaborator. Leadership is important, but we cannot make progress without collaboration. I've learned how important it is to build bridges instead of walls. I've seen how dysfunctional councils work, and it's much the same as dysfunctional federal government. It's gridlock. Nothing gets done. Nobody's proud of it. I think that that's a really important priority. Our budget is strong. Our bond rating is incredible. We have one of the safest cities in America. We're doing a lot of things right. It's why I love to live here. It's why you love to live here. It's important to preserve that, and moving forward, to be able to work with the people who can continue making this happen. I love Lehi. I would be honored to serve as your mayor. Thank you for taking